Charlie, what was the turning point? When did you know you were going to be wealthy? And I always tell them the same thing. It wasn't when I made my first million. It wasn't when Berkshire took off. It was the day I crossed $100,000. That day, that specific moment. Because once you get to that first 100,000, everything changes. The mathematics changes. The psychology changes. The entire game changes. But let me tell you something that might discourage you at first, but stick with me because there is tremendous hope on the other side of this. Getting to that first $100,000, it is hell, absolute hell. It is the hardest money you will ever make in your entire life. Harder than your first million. Harder than your first 10 million. Harder than anything that comes after. And most people, 98% of people, they quit before they get there. They give up, they get frustrated. They think it is taking too long. They see others getting rich quickly and they abandon the path. And they never ever see what happens on the other side of that $100,000 mark. Let me explain why. And I'm going to use an image that Warren loves because it perfectly captures what I'm talking about. Imagine a snowball, a small snowball at the bottom of a very long, very steep hill. And your job is to push that snowball up the hill. Every dollar you save, every dollar you invest, that is you packing more snow onto that ball and pushing it higher up that hill. It is exhausting. Your arms ache. Your back hurts. You're sweating. You look up and the top seems impossibly far away. Other people walk past you on easier paths, and you wonder if you're wasting your time. That climb to $100,000, that is you doing all the work. It is your salary, your savings, your discipline, your sacrifice. Every dollar comes from your own labor and your own restraint. You're not going out to expensive dinners. You're not buying the new car. You're not taking the fancy vacations. You're packing snow onto that ball and pushing day after day, month after month, year after year. And it feels like it is never going to end. I remember when I was in my 30s, practicing law and running my investment partnership. I was making decent money, maybe $20,000 a year from the law practice. But I was saving everything I could, living modestly, investing every spare dollar. And I watched that number creep up so slowly, 30,000, 50,000, it felt like it was taking forever. There were moments when I thought, is this even worth it? Other guys are out having fun, and I'm sitting here counting every penny. But here is what I understood that most people don't. And this is crucial, so pay attention. Wealth accumulation is not linear. It is exponential. What does that mean? It means that the early dollars, they're worth more than the later dollars in terms of eventual outcome, because those early dollars have the most time to compound. A dollar saved and invested at age 25 is worth far more than a dollar saved at age 50. Not because the dollar itself is different, but because of time. Time is the multiplier. Time is the secret ingredient, and most people waste their time in the early years when it matters most. Let me show you the mathematics of why that first 100,000 is so critical. Let's say you're 25 years old and you manage to save and invest $100,000. And let's say you can earn 10% a year on that money. Not by trading, not by getting lucky, just by owning good businesses through index funds or quality stocks and leaving it alone. At 10%, money doubles roughly every 7 years. This is the rule of 72. You divide 72 by your rate of return, and that tells you how many years to double. So at age 32, 7 years later, your 100,000 is 200,000, and you didn't add a penny. It doubled itself. At age 39, it is 400,000. At age 46, it is 800,000. At age 53, it is 1.6 million. At age 60, it is 3.2 million. At age 67, when you retire, it is 6.4 million. From $100,000 that you saved by age 25. That is the power of compounding over time. But now let's say you don't get to 100,000 until you're 40 years old, 15 years later. Same 10% return, same discipline by age 67. You'll have $800,000. Still good money. But you missed out on $5.6 million. $5.6 million by starting 15 years later. That is what I mean when I say the early dollars are worth more. Not because they grow faster, but because they have more time to grow. So that first 100,000, it is not just a number. It is the seed capital for everything that comes after. It is the snowball that, once you get it to the top of that hill, starts rolling down the other side on its own. And here is where the magic happens. Here is what 98% of people never see because they quit too early. Once you get that snowball to the top of the hill, once you cross that $100,000 mark, you can let go. You don't have to push anymore. Oh, you can give it a nudge here and there by adding more savings. But the hard work, the exhausting part, that is done. The snowball starts rolling downhill on its own, and as it rolls, it picks up more snow. It gets bigger, it gets heavier, it gets faster. All by itself. What is the snow? It is picking up compound returns. That 100,000 earning 10% throws off $10,000 in year one. Now you've got 110,000 next year. That 110 earns 11,000. Now you're at 121,000. And it keeps accelerating. You're not working harder. You're not making more sacrifices. The money is making money. The snowball is rolling itself down the hill, getting bigger with every revolution. And here is what really blows people's minds. Going from 100,000 to 200,000 happens faster than going from 0 to 100,000. Going from 200,000 to 400,000 happens even faster. Not because you're doing anything different, because the compounding is doing more of the work and you're doing less. The ratios flip. At the beginning, it is 98% your effort, 2% compounding. By the time you hit 100,000, it is maybe 50-50. By the time you hit 500,000, it is 20% your effort, 80% compounding. And eventually, it is almost all compounding and almost none of you. Let me give you a specific example from my own life. When I was running my investment partnership in the 1960s, I started with very little, maybe $100,000 in total capital from 7 investors, family and friends. And I was killing myself trying to find good investments, analyzing companies, making smart decisions. Every percentage point mattered because the base was so small, working 60, 70 hours a week to generate returns. But once we crossed $1 million in assets, the same amount of work, the same quality of decisions, they generated far more absolute dollars. A 10% return on $1 million is $100,000. That is the same amount I started with, generated in 1 year from the existing capital. I didn't have to work any harder. The money was working, and as we crossed 10 million, then 50 million, the effect accelerated. The same effort generated exponentially more dollars because the base kept growing. Now here is the psychological trap that kills most people. And I've watched this destroy smart, capable people over and over again for 70 years. They don't understand that the first part is supposed to be hard. They think something's wrong. They think they're failing. They look at their account balance after a year of saving and it has gone from 5,000 to 15,000. And they think, this is pointless. At this rate, I'll never be wealthy. It is going to take me forever to get to 1 million. And they're right, at that rate, it will take forever. But they don't understand that the rate isn't constant. It accelerates. It is like they're judging the entire journey by the first mile. Imagine you're driving across the country. And after the first hour, you've only gone 30 miles because you were stuck in city traffic. And you calculate, well, at 30 miles per hour, it is going to take me 90 hours to get there. Forget this. I quit. But you don't realize that once you get out of the city and onto the open highway, you'll be doing 70 miles an hour. The whole trip doesn't happen at the city traffic pace. Most of it happens at highway speed. Wealth accumulation is the same way. The early part, getting out of the city, it is slow. It is frustrating. It feels like you're barely moving. But once you get to that first 100,000, you hit the open highway, and then the miles start clicking off fast, really fast. I succeeded because I have a long attention span. That is not false modesty. That is just reality. I could sit there and wait while other people got bored and did stupid things. And let me tell you, waiting is hard. It is contrary to human nature. We're wired for action. We want to see results now. We want to feel productive. Just sitting there watching your money slowly accumulate, it doesn't feel like you're doing anything. You don't feel useful. You don't feel active. But that is exactly what you need to do. You need to sit on your ass. That is a technical term Warren and I use. Sit on your ass investing. You save money. You invest it in good businesses. And then you sit on your ass. You don't trade it. You don't second guess it. You don't panic when the market goes down. You don't get excited when the market goes up. You just sit there and let compounding do its work. You let the snowball roll. The problem is, most people can't stand it. They need to be doing something. The market goes down 5% and they panic and sell. The market goes up 5% and they think they're geniuses and buy more. They see some hot stock tip and they chase it. They get bored with their boring dividend stocks and they want something more exciting. And every time they do something, every time they interrupt the process, they're pushing the snowball back down the hill. They're resetting the clock. They're destroying years of compounding with one stupid, impatient decision. You know what the difference is between the 2% who build real wealth and the 98% who struggle? Temperament, not intelligence. I've known brilliant people who died broke. I've known people of average intelligence who became very wealthy. The difference was temperament, the ability to wait, the ability to do nothing when nothing is the right thing to do, the ability to watch your 100,000 sit there for years growing to 120,000, then 150,000, then 200,000, and not touch it, not pull it out, not chase something better, just let it work. Let me tell you about two people I knew. We'll call them Robert and Susan. Both started investing at age 25 with $10,000. Both earned decent incomes and could save $5,000 a year. Both invested in simple index funds earning about 10% a year, identical circumstances, but completely different outcomes. Robert had no temperament. When the market went up, he'd get excited and think he should be more aggressive. He'd sell his index funds and buy individual hot stocks. When those stocks went down, he'd panic and sell them at a loss. When he heard about some new investment trend, cryptocurrency or tech stocks or whatever, he'd chase it. He was always doing something, always active, always trading. And after 30 years, at age 55, Robert had accumulated about $300,000. Not bad. He'd put in $150,000 of his own savings over 30 years, and it had doubled. He'd made $10,000 a year on average. He felt pretty good about that. Susan had temperament. She put her $5,000 a year into index funds, and then she sat on her ass. The market went down 20% in 2008. She didn't touch it. It went up 30% the next year. She didn't touch it. She got so bored with her investment account that she only looked at it once a year when her statement came. She never traded. She never got fancy. She just let it sit there year after year, compounding. And after 30 years, at age 55, Susan had $1.3 million. Same starting point, same annual savings, but 4 times the ending balance. What was the difference? Susan let the snowball roll. Robert kept interrupting it. Robert couldn't stand to wait. Every time he made a trade, every time he chased something new, he was pushing that snowball back down the hill just a little bit. And over 30 years, all those little interruptions added up to $1 million in lost wealth. $1 million, that is the cost of not having temperament. Now, let me tell you how to actually get to that first 100,000, because knowing it is important and actually doing it are two different things. And most people, they don't have a systematic approach. They just kind of hope it happens. Hope is not a strategy. First thing, you need to understand that in the beginning, your savings rate matters far more than your investment returns. People obsess over finding the perfect stock or beating the market by 2%. That is irrelevant when you have $10,000. 2% of $10,000 is $200. You can save $200 by not going out to eat for a month. Your time is better spent earning more income or cutting expenses than trying to optimize your investment returns. The return on a small base doesn't matter much. Building the base matters everything. So when you're starting out, when you've got $0 to $50,000, your focus should be 80% on earning and saving, 20% on investing. Just put the money in index funds and forget about it. Don't try to be a stock picker. Don't try to time the market. You're not going to beat the market consistently. And even if you could, it wouldn't matter on a small base. But save aggressively. I mean, really aggressively. Most people save 5 or 10% of their income and think they're doing well. If you want to get to 100,000 fast, you need to be saving 30, 40, 50%. I know that sounds impossible, but it is not. It requires discipline and sacrifice, but it is absolutely doable. You need to live below your means. Well below drive a used car, live in a smaller place. Cook at home, skip the fancy vacations. Every dollar you don't spend is a dollar you can invest. And every dollar you invest at age 25 is worth $10 or $20 at age 65. The desire to get rich fast is pretty dangerous. I've seen it destroy more people than anything else in investing. They want shortcuts, they want to double their money in a year. So they chase speculative investments, leverage, options, cryptocurrency, whatever the latest mania is, and they usually end up losing everything, because getting rich fast is gambling, not investing. And the house always wins eventually when you're gambling. Getting rich slowly, on the other hand, is almost guaranteed. If you save consistently, invest in good businesses, and wait patiently, you will get wealthy. It is mathematics. It is compounding. It is time. There is no trick to it. There is no secret. It is just discipline and patience applied over decades. Once you get to maybe $50,000 or $75,000, you start to feel the momentum. The balance is growing faster now. You're adding maybe $5,000 a year from savings, but the account is growing by another $4,000 or $5,000 from investment returns. You're starting to see the snowball pick up snow on its own. That is when you need to double down on patience, because you're so close to the inflection point, and then you cross 100,000. And for the first time, the annual growth from your investments exceeds what you can save from your income. Your 100,000 earning 10% generates $10,000. You probably can't save $10,000 a year from your salary, not if you're young and starting out. So for the first time, your money is making more than you are. That is when you become an investor instead of just a saver. That is when you've got capital, real capital that works for you instead of you working for it. From there, the mathematics take over. 100 to 200,000 takes maybe 7 to 10 years, depending on your returns and continued savings. 200 to 400 might take 6 years. 400 to 800, maybe 5 years. The time compresses because the compounding is doing more and more of the work. And before you know it, usually within 15 to 20 years of crossing that first 100,000, you're at $1 million. And you didn't work any harder in the later years than the early years. You probably worked less. The money was doing the work. Here is what you need to internalize. That first 100,000, it is a test. It is testing your temperament. It is testing your discipline. It is testing whether you can delay gratification. It is testing whether you can ignore what everyone else is doing and stick to a boring, simple, slow plan. Most people fail this test. They want excitement. They want to feel smart. They want to beat the market. They want to get rich quick. And they fail. The 2% who pass the test, who push that snowball all the way to the top of the hill, they get to see what 98% never see. They get to watch their wealth compound effortlessly for decades. They get to experience the joy of opening their statement and seeing it has grown by 50,000 in a year without them doing anything. They get to retire early because their money is working harder than they ever could. They get financial independence, real independence. Not having to worry about money, not having to work if they don't want to, having choices, having freedom. That is what the first 100,000 buys you, not the 100,000 itself. But everything that comes after it, it is the admission price to the game of compounding. It is the seed capital for a lifetime of wealth. It is the hardest money you'll ever make, but it unlocks all the easy money that follows. I'm 99 years old. I've been wealthy for over 70 years. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, from 7 decades of experience, that this is how it works. This is how ordinary people become wealthy. Not by getting lucky. Not by finding some secret strategy. Not by beating the market, but by pushing that snowball up the hill until they reach the top, and then letting it roll. The question is, do you have the temperament? Do you have the patience? Can you sit on your ass for 7 years, 10 years, however long it takes, watching that balance slowly creep toward 100,000 while your friends are out spending money and having fun? Can you ignore the noise, the hot stock tips, the get-rich-quick schemes, the market crashes, the manias, all of it, and just keep adding to your position and waiting? If you can, if you really can, then I can virtually guarantee you'll be wealthy. Not this year, not next year, but eventually, definitely, because the mathematics are on your side. Compounding is on your side. Time is on your side. All you have to do is not interrupt it. All you have to do is push that snowball to the top of the hill and let go. That first 100,000 is hell, but what comes after is heaven. And it is worth every difficult step of the journey.